Fiction and reality. New stories, new ideas. Little Beth Entertainment.
Welcome to episode 99 of The Rocketry Show at TheRocketryShow.com. We've got a really fun show for you here ahead. We've got Cris Erving joining us from Eggtimer Rocketry. We're going to be talking Eggtimer Rocketry stuff and tips and tricks and more. Stick around. The Rocketry Show starts right after this.
Going up in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, liftoff.
From Little Beth Media, a new podcast on model rocketry, with build techniques, model rocket history, interviews with industry insiders, stuff for beginners and longtime model rocketeers, everything from low to mid-power. The Model Rocket Show, with me, the Rocket Noob, at TheRocketryShow.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
The Rocketry Show would like to thank the following patrons for their support: Todd West, Matt Tudor, Les Rayburn, Steven Spencer, Bill Cook, Jason Cook, Gary Rosenfield, Greg Ziegler, Toby Vanderbeek, Ken Blade, Eric Hamilton, John Beans, Scott Holla, Guy Wadsworth, Phil P., Tom Rum, Jeff Cotis, Stephen Ray, Amanda Ho, Steve Sainer, Mark, RailButtons.com, and Todd West. If you wish to show your support and become a patron of The Rocketry Show, just visit us at patreon.com/The Rocketry Show.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running.
Welcome to The Rocketry Show.
All right, liftoff and the clock is started. Yes, sir. Reading it loud and clear.
A podcast that is all about advanced and high-power rocketry. Amateur-built rockets, starting at mid-power to higher-power versions. This program is hosted by the team who loves the smell of burning rocket propellant in the morning. Here are CG, Gene, and model rocket guy, Jesse Yu.
Welcome once again to The Rocketry Show at TheRocketryShow.com, episode 99. I'm CG.
I'm Gene.
And I'm Jesse Yu, model rocket guy.
Yes, and this is the first episode of season 7, just as a reference. Yeah. So we're starting our 7th year, 6 years out of the way of The Rocketry Show. Man, it's amazing. You remember when we first started, we were wondering, okay, well, I don't know how long we can keep doing this show, but we're going to try to enjoy it while we can. And
Yes. I had no idea. I figured, a couple of years, maybe it'll be fun, blah, blah, blah. 7 years later.
Well,
wow,
6,
amazing.
6, but we're starting on 7, so.
Yeah, I know we're starting, so it counts. And I'd click it.
Okay, you clicked it. The odometer rolled over for you already.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've got a great episode, so we're not going to hold up too much here. We'll talk more after the interview here. We've got Cris Erving from Eggtimer Rocketry waiting in the wings, so we're going to just jump right on over to that right now. You're going to love it. Trust me, you're going to love it. We've got Cris on the line. Cris, welcome, and thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, thank you very much for taking the time to come talk with us. This is a long-anticipated guest as far as our audience is concerned. So tell us, what got you started with Eggtimer Rocketry?
Well, I've been flying rockets since I was about 9 or 10, and many, many, many years ago. And on and off and on and off. And every time I got out of it and back into it, it kind of got a little bit bigger rockets when I got back into it. But about 10 or so years ago, my kids were basically at an age where I didn't have to spend a lot of time maintaining them anymore. So I was able to go back and spend a little time on my hobbies. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to go get back into rocketry. And you know what? I think I'm going to go in, I'm going to do some playing around with electronics too. That's another kind of concurrent hobby that I've had from a kid. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at the electronics that were out there, and I thought, dang, this stuff's expensive. I can't really afford this. But, I think maybe I'll just roll my own. So I started doing that. And about 30 years ago, I did a product for the good old Commodore Amiga. It was a memory board, and I sold that as a kit. And I thought, after I did this, I kind of liked the way it came out. And I thought, well, maybe I can sell a few of these as kits just for giggles, So that's how Eggtimer Rocketry was born. And the Eggtimer name came out because when I originally went out to do this, I thought, this is something that the Turk people could use. And since they're flying eggs, Eggtimer. Now, those of you who that's where that name came from. Now, those of you who actually know anything about TARC, and I do because I'm a mentor now, know that the only altimeters you can use are the non-deployment altimeters made by Perfect Flight. So you can't just go out and use an arbitrary altimeter. You have to use the ones that TARC has blessed. So I didn't know that when I did this, or I might have come up with another name, but the name stuck. And actually, there's a lot of bad puns you can make out of it. But I like the name, and I have an idea for a logo. People keep saying, well, how come you don't give us stickers and have a logo and all that? Well, haven't got around to doing it, but I've got a logo in my head, and one of these days I'll probably get with somebody and actually do that. But anyway, the original Eggtimer Classic, and it wasn't called the Classic at the time, that came out I announced it in 2012, started shipping them early 2013. And that was about the same time I got my level 1. And I knew right off the bat, hey, I'm going to need to get a level 2. So I got a level 2 pretty quickly. And my level 2, it was a giant leap escape velocity. It went to about 7,500 feet and landed like 1.5 miles away.
Wow.
And so here I am walking. Oh, it went that way. Walking. Thank God this was out in the desert, out at Lucerne Valley, where it's basically flat. And even though it's flat and there's no obstructions, you can still lose stuff out there.
Yes.
It is possible.
Yep.
I know people that have done it.
And have the t-shirt.
Finally, I got there and I saw the chute and I said, thank God, there it is. And it was still another almost 0.5 mile away once I saw the chute. But I got out there, and once I got it, and it beeped everything out. It worked perfectly. I actually had 2 Eggtimers in it, dual deploy with redundancy. Mm-hmm. I said, I really need a tracker. I guess I better do that one too. So that's how the trackers came about. And so within a year of that, I had developed the original Egg Finder tracker with a dongle receiver. And after playing with that for about a month or 2 after shipping, I said, I really need to put a display on this. So then I did the LCD display receiver. So that actually all shipped in the same year. So since then, we've done basically all kinds of different products too, of which about half of our line now has some kind of remote capability too. So including 3 of our altimeters.
Nice.
That's cool.
So tell us some of the products that are in your lineup here.
Well, we actually have a number of different altimeters going from bottom to top. We have the Apogee altimeter that we just released, and that's the one that I spoke of at NARAM.
Mm-hmm.
We attended the NARAM Virtual Manufacturers Forum, and that's a little single channel deployment altimeter. It'll deploy at Apogee, and it'll beep out your Apogee. That's why we call it the Apogee. And that one, it's a little board. It's about 1 3/4 inches by about 0.85 inches, something like that. It fits in 24 millimeter tube. So it's really designed. That particular product is designed for people that are in mid power or level 1, and you want to start getting into electronic deployment, but you don't necessarily want to get into a full dual deployment setup. You just want to kind of get your feet wet into electronic deployment. So this will let you deploy it at Apogee, but it's really cheap. It lists for $15 for the kit. And actually, we recently had our holiday sale. They were on sale then too, like everything else. But we worked with part of the concept of this is we want to make it easy to build. So it's almost all through-hole parts. There's 2 surface mount parts on the whole board. One of them is a baro sensor, which we pre-mount for you, as we do all our products, because it's not something most people could solder. They have to be basically done in a surface mount oven. And the second is a 1 capacitor that you can solder on, and that's a huge capacitor. It's like if you're familiar with surface mount, it's 1206 size, so you can almost do it without a magnifier. It's huge. So, and that's the only surface mount on the whole thing. You can make one of these things, even if you're not experienced at soldering. You can build one of these things in half an hour to an hour. It's very easy. And we worked with Chris Bender from Lab Rat Rocketry on getting a special mount for it. So we have a special mount that's designed to go into your nose cone. So if you have something like I have a Leviathan here that I just hogged out a 1-inch hole in, and boom, this thing just screws right into it. Or if you have a small fiberglass kit with bulk plates, you can just drill a hole in that, and it'll fit in that too. So, and it uses a little LiPo battery. I know you've had discussions about LiPo versus the 9-volt batteries or whatever. We're huge proponents of LiPo.
Yes.
Because it's basically impossible for one to fail in flight. I mean, the connector might if you don't, tie it down, or if you don't tape it together, which we strongly recommend taping the JST connectors together, because tape's cheap. Use all solution. You want. Use what you think is going to work, and then double it. That's kind of our rule for tape.
Sounds familiar.
But it's a very easy to use altimeter.
Yeah, I know over the last several years that I've been using LiPos, I would have to totally agree. I mean, that's made the electronics flight of my rocketry so reliable. It really took a huge variable out of the picture. So just take care with don't damage them, and make sure you charge them the right way, but treat them well and they'll treat you well.
Yep, I've moved all over to LiPos and myself.
Yeah, once you buy the LiPo charger, you buy it once and you're done.
Right.
So you can get a decent LiPo charger for like $40 from like Hobby King. If you want to get real fancy one, you could spend a lot more money than that. The car guys go out and they spend $150 or $200 on chargers, but the difference is the LiPos that we're using, there might be nothing more than 3 cells. Most of them are 2, and if you're flying a night light rocket, with a bunch of LEDs in it, maybe you'll go to a 3-cell LiPo for that. Right. That's like the only thing I use a 3-cell for is my night rockets. But you don't need to go crazy on the charger. A $40 charger works great.
Right.
And most of our altimeters are designed, except for the Apogee, which uses a little 1S LiPo. All the other stuff uses 2S LiPos. And that's kind of standard. Almost every altimeter on the market will work with a 2S LiPo. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I've settled in on my stuff too. Are the 2-cell LiPos here. So anyway, so we've got the Apogee.
So
Eggtimer Apogee.
We got the Apogee, and then going up the line, we have the Quark, and the Quark is really small dual deployment altimeter. It's like 0.7 inches by like an inch and a half. You can actually put one of these things in a BT-20, and I've done it.
Nice.
It's very small. If you leave off the terminal blocks, which it actually doesn't come with the terminal blocks anyway. I'm a big fan of just soldering the wires directly to it.
Direct to the board.
So some of our products come with, some of them come with it, some of them don't. The Quark doesn't come with it because it's designed. I mean, it's very inexpensive too. It lists for $20. And, it's one of these things, you're going to put one in your rocket, you're never going to take it out. So why do you need terminal blocks? That's just one less thing to come loose. Just solder the wire to it, run the wire out to your screw terminal blocks and your bulkheads, and you're done.
Yeah,
sweet.
Simple's better.
Like that.
And then the next one up from that would be the Classic. And the Classic is basically our kind of I call it Classic because when people think of a dual deployment altimeter, they think of two outputs. It records your flight data. You download it with a cable. You program it with a cable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what the Classic is. And that was our first product, and we still sell those.
It looks a lot like a Classic too, with through the hole parts on it. Looks like, and
it's all through hole. It's relatively easy to build.
Big giant
I'm not
MOSFETs.
sure how much longer we're going to be able to sell that. Because the baro sensor that it's used has gone into life. I had a source for them, and I had a whole bunch of them, and it looks like my source is dried up. So I'm still trying to find another source. If I can't do it, I may just say, hey, end of the line on this guy, because I don't sell very many of these. The funny thing about them is most of the ones I sell are to Europe. For some reason, they really, really like those out in Europe. I saw them in Germany, France, Belgium. They really love the through-hole old stuff. But I don't know why. And then we have the Quantum, and the Quantum was our original Wi-Fi altimeter. It's Wi-Fi, and basically, what makes the Quantum different than virtually every other altimeter on the market is that everything on it is remote using your Wi-Fi connection. So basically, it has a Wi-Fi processor on it, and it acts as both an access point and a server. So basically, what you do is you just connect to it with your phone, and boom, you get a page. And you can change your flight parameters. You can download your data. You can arm it remotely. Now, the thing with the the Quantum, is that it's designed to be armed remotely. So most altimeters, once you apply power to them, they'll go through some rigmarole. Well, they'll do some checking. Maybe they'll beep out the old apogee, things like that. And then they'll, assuming you have continuity on all the channels, they'll immediately go into an arming sequence. Like, okay, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to deploy charges. In other words, they're assuming you're not turning them on until you're on the pad.
Right.
The Quantum's different. The Quantum doesn't do that. It doesn't arm automatically. You have to go in and you have to enter a 4-digit code and then go arm. And that 4-digit code changes every 60 seconds. So you can't pocket arm it. It won't accidentally arm. It's impossible. And not only that, but the deployment circuitry on it has a separate switch built into it. And we can talk about the Wi-Fi switches later. But basically, it has a switch built into the circuitry that doesn't arm until you're in flight. It waits until it does launch detect. And once it detects that you've launched, it says, okay, now we can turn on the deployment power. And that's either power for deployment, or it will also do air starts. So it will also turn on the power for that as well. So it's basically very, very safe. That when we designed this thing, we designed it with safety in mind. So you can't It won't automatically arm. There's essentially no current going to the igniters. There's like 200 microamps for deployment testing, and that's it. So it's extraordinarily safe.
Yeah, when talking to Cris before we started recording, I started bonding with him because there's a lot of things where we think really similar, and that's one of these things where with the stuff I've been working on, mine, as Jim would tell you because he's been mission control, that my charges don't arm until the rocket's in the air as well, and it tells you back at the base station armed, and it doesn't arm the other one until it'll arm the apogee at that point, but the main doesn't arm until after you get to the apogee event. So, and then it arms the.
Ours do that too. Of course, it's got a, and of course, all of our altimeters are Mach safe, and that includes the apogee.
Yes,
you could actually, if you wanted to use an apogee as a backup drogue in your level 3 rocket, go for it because it's good for 60,000 feet and it's fully Mach safe.
Cool.
Okay. The Quantum will do air starts, and it has qualifications for velocity at time or altitude at time.
Okay. Yep.
And it also has brake wire support, which not too many people use brake wires, but they could be useful. So we put brake wire support in it. So, and that's a nice little unit, and that's like that kit lists for $40.
That's a lot of power.
And finally, that it is very powerful, and it'll store your last I think it's 15 flights.
Nice.
So you can go in and you literally. The cool thing about that is you fly it and your rocket goes 10 or 12,000 feet and it lands a mile away, and you get your Jeep or your quad or whatever you're using to go get it. You go get it. And when you find your rocket, it's beeping out the apogee, and you can connect to it, the web page with your Wi-Fi, and it'll immediately tell you how high, what the velocity was, all kinds of information like that right off the bat. Wi-Fi range on this is typically at least 100 feet.
Okay.
So, and people ask us all the time, well, why do you use Wi-Fi instead of Bluetooth? Because a lot of people say, oh, Bluetooth this, Bluetooth this. Our tracking receiver is Bluetooth. We're doing everything with Bluetooth. The problem with Bluetooth is there's a couple of problems. One, Bluetooth doesn't have a whole lot of range. Now, if you're just using it for this sort of thing, that's not necessarily a big deal, But on the other hand, if you're arming a level 3 rocket, it's not a bad idea to stand as far away from it as possible, before you arm it.
Right.
I'm not a big fan of sticking my nose up against a rocket and fiddling with a screw switch or, one of those little 110, 220 Schroeder switches, which I stopped using those a long time ago, by the way. I know you've mentioned these, but I've had a few of them come apart trying to turn them on and off. And I said, okay, the rocketry guys are trying to tell me something, so I'm going to stop using these things. But, and especially arming, an air start. And that's the thing about the remote arming. When you have something like an air start, it's nice to be able to arm that away from the rocket because, something probably isn't going to happen. But if it does, well, guess what? My face is right next to that motor.
Right.
And then finally, our high-end altimeter is the Proton, and we released that about 2 years ago, and that is a 6-output altimeter with 120G accelerometer in it.
Nice.
And basically any channel will do anything. So
fully programmable.
It's not like somewhere, okay, this is the main channel and this is the drogue channel, and the other two, well, okay. Every channel will do anything. So let's say you said, and I designed that thing after the first Falcon Heavy. I thought, wow, man, that's really cool. I want to do that. But, it's going to take a lot of channels to do that. And I'm going to need to do this and this and this. So the Classic, the Quantum, and the Proton, they all support servo deployments too. So I have actually had TART teams use them for deploying grid fins or things like that on the way down. Because, you can't use it as your altitude altimeter, but you can have an auxiliary altitude altimeter. Yep. But, I was thinking, cool, I'll use the servos and then I can use that for deploying landing legs. That would be cool.
Yes.
So that's a get to it. I'm still kind of getting around to building that rocket, but I've got the electronics for it when I do. But it uses the accelerometer, or it can use the accelerometer for staging, and it will it'll record up to 6 different boost burnout events. So it's very handy for doing multiple air starts. So it will handle multiple air starts quite easily. And it basically, it's a Swiss Army knife kind of altimeter. That one, it's a little bit large, but it'll do almost anything. And it's Wi-Fi too. So just like the Quantum, you arm it remotely. You can reprogram it remotely. If the wind comes up and you say, I think I'm going to drop my chute down from 500 to 300, not a problem. Okay. You don't have to take everything apart and stick a cable in to do it. Right. You can do it remotely.
Oh, man.
That's very nice.
Yes.
It's usually I set my stuff up the day or two before the launch, but there are times when the winds are a little different. I would I wish I could take it down a couple hundred. Nah. So yeah, that would be handy.
Good point, guys.
Because you don't want to open up the AV bay.
Right.
No, absolutely not. It's all loaded. Yeah.
Cool. So we're going to take this moment to take a quick break, and we'll continue on with more of the kits available with Eggtimer Rocketry. If you're not familiar with Eggtimer, you are going to be by the time this show is over. And we'll talk a lot more as far as kits, altimeters from this company, and tips and tricks, and so much more. That happens right after this on The Rocketry Show. Stick around. Lock Precision Rocketry manufactures a full line of high-quality precision fit components to meet your building, repairing, and customizing needs. Lock Precision believes in making rocket kits as light as possible while maintaining the strength required to fly with commercially available motors. Lock Precision offers a wide range of rocket kits from the 1-inch diameter Lock 1 series to high-power rockets reaching 7.6 inches in diameter. When you visit lockprecision.com, be sure to check out their Performance Series kits featuring such designs as the Black Brand 10, the Caliper ISP, and the 3.1-inch diameter Iris rocket. All of Lock Precision's performance kits comes with everything you need, including pre-slotted airframes, high-grade precision-cut plywood fins and components, as well as ripstop nylon parachutes, rugged shock cords, polypropylene nose cone, and instructions. The name Lock Precision has been synonymous with mid and high-power rocketry for over 30 years. Check out lockprecision.com to find out why. Lockprecision.com. Fly higher. Fly lock. It's time for eRockets.biz. eRockets is your home for unique model rocket kits as well as the world's largest selection of rocket parts from Semrock. They've been in business since 2009. eRockets.biz doesn't just stock many of your favorite in-production kits. They also produce their own versions of popular out-of-production models and kits that many of you have come to enjoy over the years. And Jesse, what did you find?
So when I was looking for my level 1 rocket, I did come across this one, and then I was talked out of it. But now that I have a little bit of experience, I'm going to go back and I think I'm going to get this. This is the Lock Precision Nuke Pro Max. So eRockets has this in stock right now, and they have quite a few. And this is a rocket that I highly recommend because it's a 2.2 diameter. So I think that, what is that, 54 millimeter, Jim, if I'm not right?
Roughly.
If I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So this has a 38 millimeter motor mount. Ooh. So that's a small rocket It's about 40 inches long, just right under 40 inches long, 38 millimeter motor mount. Comes with a chute, comes with a fire blanket even, 1/4-inch fins. So it's made to put some juice in that thing, right? One of the reasons that I obviously didn't want to do this for a level 1 is because you're going to get some altitude out of this thing, and I wanted to do low and slow. So I went with something else. But now that eRockets has this on sale, I'm thinking I might want to jump on that, and I recommend you guys do that too. This one actually comes with a vinyl decal, is what it shows here. Recommended for FG, H, and I motors. And, obviously you can adapt it down if you want to and do some 29 millimeters in there, after you do some sims and whatnot. Nuke Pro Max, it's a great looking rocket. I always wanted one. I think I'm going to jump on it. So take a look at that, guys.
All righty.
Cool. Sounds awesome.
Yes, it does. And if you have any other model rocket kits or reissues you want to try to find and purchase from eRockets, just go there because they've got lots and lots of kits. We've got enough kits to keep you busy building rockets for a long time to come, as well as rocket parts from Semrock. eRockets.biz supplies the full Semrock line of airframes, nose cones, center rings, motor mounts, and so much more. eRockets has more rocket parts available than anyone else on Earth. Check out eRockets.biz today to learn more. eRockets.biz. If rocketry scares you, buy a train set. North Coast Rocketry, one of the first high-power rocketry kit companies ever, takes advantage of over 30 years of high-power experience by a world-class rocketeer. You can look to North Coast Rocketry to expand your high-power rocket fleet. In addition to great kits, North Coast Rocketry also stocks lots of must-have items and accessories for every Rocketeer's workshop. Find out more about these kits and other great products today. Go to northcoastrocketry.com. And while you're there, don't forget to get their latest catalog, northcoastrocketry.com. Advanced rockets that are easy to build, fun to fly, and look great on display. The Rocketry Show would like to thank the following patrons for their support: Timothy Mock, Jeff Curtis, Phil Bridges, Scott Masters, Roy Tyson, Rob Hoagie, R. Smith, Gary Dow, Jay Pullman, Don J., G. Smearden, M. Erisman, Pierre Marlou, Jeff Curtis, Brian Lopato, Philip Calvin, Jay Bryan, Casey Anderson, Terry Dancer, Mark Essenwine, Jim Wilson, Jason O'Scally, and Scott Masters. If you wish to show your support and become a patron of The Rocketry Show, just visit us at patreon.com/The Rocketry Show. Welcome back to The Rocketry Show at TheRocketryShow.com. This is a great show. We're talking to Cris Erving from Eggtimer Rocketry. He is the chief cook and bottle washer there. And we're going through all the kits that are available. And there's lots of cool stuff here. So we're going to just jump right in and pick up where we left off because there's a lot to go over. So, Cris, I'll let you take us to the next round of products here.
Okay. We also have a couple switches. Wi-Fi operated switches, and that was actually the first Wi-Fi products that we did. Mm-hmm. Actually, the original concept was for the Quantum, but to get there, we needed to be able to design the interface and the switch because Quantum has a switch built in.
Right.
So we said, well, we'll just do a switch so that everybody can use the wireless technology too. Mm-hmm. And we actually sell a lot of the switches to people that do very high-end staging because, they're doing like N's to O's or something like that.
Right.
They don't want to be anywhere near that thing when they arm it, so this allows them to do that, And again, the nice thing about the Wi-Fi, besides the fact it's got a fair amount of range, is there's no apps. So you don't need to load an app on your phone. It's just using your browser. It doesn't matter if it's Android. It doesn't matter if it's, you just, boom, set your browser to it. Mm-hmm. And that means that any change we make doesn't require any change to something you have to download in your phone. So
see now with these switches, this is actually probably going to be the first few things that I'll order from you because
switches are cool.
Yeah, because while I'm working on stuff, I'm like, okay, I can design this with a screw switch, but is there something better? And I was looking over your site and I'm going, Maybe this is the time I jump into the Wi-Fi switch. Yeah. So go ahead. Yeah, I'll let you continue, sir.
They're so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, believe me, they're so much better. Once you start using them, it's like, oh my God, why did I ever mess with this stuff before?
It took me so long.
But what took you so long? And of course, everybody's familiar with the infamous Tripoli switch rule, which they rescinded about a month ago. I was
just going to ask you about that.
But
right.
Off is off. Literally when you shut the switch off, there is zero current going through it. And for some reason, somebody in February at Tripoli decided, screw switch zero is different than electronic switch zero. So there was a short period of time when they said, well, you got to add a mechanical switch to it. And there were basically a lot of people that were using R switches and also featherweight mag switches and other types of electronic switches that were basically coming after Tripoli with, pitchforks and torches. And after a while, they kind of realized that, zero is zero. If there's no current flowing through there, there's no current flowing through there. And it doesn't matter what interrupts it, whether it's an electronic switch or whether it's a mechanical switch. So
or twisted wires.
Rescind the mechanical
twisted wires. Yep.
Or twisted wires. You will never convince me that twisting a couple wires together, taping them, and then wrapping a couple rows of tape around the outside of your rocket to hold it all together is better than something that's soldered together permanently. I know that's just a personal prejudice of mine, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not a huge fan of twist and tape. I do use twist and tape for putting igniters inside the bays. I do that all the time. I just have lots of times I'll just solder the wires directly to the altimeters, run it through a hole in the AV base, seal it up, and then I'll just twist and tape the igniter wires to that. But they're not in the airstream.
Right.
Having the power to your altimeter sitting out there in the airstream, no bueno. So, so anyway, I'm glad they rescinded that. And as I mentioned earlier, I had some conversations before and after that rule with Steve Shannon, who I've known for a few years. And he was kind of a big fan of the Wi-Fi switches, but he's kind of the messenger. He got tired of getting beat up on this. But I'm glad they rescinded that rule, and I'm not just glad because it killed my business on switches. Believe it or not, it did not.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just glad because it was a silly rule to begin with.
One less thing. No.
Well, people interpreted it so many different ways, and I got you. One less thing to worry about.
It was badly worded, and so going on to that, the last of our products, and certainly not the least, is our line of egg finder trackers. And as I mentioned before, I decided to do the trackers after I nearly lost my level 2 rocket. It landed a lot further than I thought it did. I thought I wasn't going to get it back. And after I got it, I said, I better do some trackers. So we've been making RF GPS trackers since 2014.
Mm-hmm.
They're 100 milliwatt, 900 megahertz unit. And I know people that have flown them to 50,000 feet. It may require a little bit of additional work on the antennas to do that, but they'll go a long ways. And honestly, most of the places that I fly, there's brush, there's all sorts of things. Even out in the lake bed, out at Lucerne Valley, if you go behind the dry lake bed, you can get into the scrub brush, or there's gullies and ruts all over the place. And if you land in a rut, you can literally go right by your rocket and not see it.
Right.
Yeah. Or when I was at LDRS a couple years ago, they did a really nice job of clearing the field out of Tripoli Central up north, out of Helm. But if you went more than about half a mile away, there were some wheat fields out there. And if you land your rocket in a wheat field, it's even worse than corn. I landed in corn before. And if you land in corn, the parachute kind of sits on top. And if you get like a bright pink chute or something like that, it's, oh yeah, I see the canopy. I don't see the rocket, but I see a little bit of orange. There's the canopy. All right.
Right.
And then there's soybeans.
It just folds on
soybean
top
fields.
of it. Soybeans are probably the same way, although I've never flown where they had soybeans before.
But didn't you say they're like BT-50
it's
tubes?
pretty much imperative that you get...
It doesn't matter with soybeans. It could be a big rocket. It's like the canopy opens up, lets the rocket go in and closes up as if nothing happened.
Oh, man. Like a fly trap.
It sucks it to the ground and just swallows it.
Yep.
Oh, man.
It's like a Venus flytrap.
It's like a James Bond movie. Come in.
Anyway, properly antennaed, you can get over 50,000 feet. And one of our products, our TRS product, which is a dual deployment altimeter and GPS combo, we offer also in a 70 centimeter ham version too. And that's at the moment, that's the only product that we offer in the ham version, because it's the only one that can send out a call sign. And that's part of the whole FCC gig for being a ham. It's got to be able to send out a call sign. Right. So that one will actually probably go to about 100,000 feet, but I don't know anybody who's flown it that high yet. But the egg finder system in general, we have a couple transmitters. We have the standard transmitter, and the transmitter is a couple inches long and will fit in a BT-50. The antenna is about 3 more inches long. It's a little wire whip antenna, but we also have a mini unit that's about half that size. And that's actually our most popular unit. It's harder to build because the parts are smaller and there's parts on both sides and it's all surface mount. But that's really our most popular unit. We just recently redid that board to make it a little easier to build. That's something we generally try to do. We like to get feedback about, hey, I like your product, but, this was hard to build. Can you make that easier? And, we try to take that advice to heart. And, when possible, we do revise our boards to try to make them easier or add a little more flexibility to them. Now, in terms of receivers, we have a little dongle. And the dongle is available either with a USB cable that you could plug into a laptop if you want to use MapSphere or something like that to map your flight while it's in progress. Mainly that's used by universities now. They like to set up ground stations. They'll have a team of people and they'll have somebody looking at the screen while everybody else is looking at the rocket and things like that. You don't want to be doing that when it's your rocket. You want to look at your rocket. So we have you can also get it with a Bluetooth module instead. And that'll transmit to your Android phone. And you can use an app like GPS Rocket Locator or Rocket Finder. And that'll, show you where your rocket is on your Android phone. It's Android only because iOS doesn't support that kind of a feed, unfortunately. But that is available. And, that's a relatively inexpensive receiver. That's kind of similar to what most other people are doing. The other receiver that we offer, and we've been offering this since late 2014, is an LCD display receiver. And it has a 2-line LCD that will give you your coordinates and your GPS altitude and how many satellites and the quality of your fix and a few things like that. If you have a TRS, it'll also show you the status of the 2 deployment channels too. There's a GPS add-in you can get for that also adds the compass point that your rocket is at in relation to you. And it's kind of funny if your rocket catches some wind and starts drifting undershoot, you can actually see that compass point changing. You can see, especially, and that's really handy if it's out of sight. You say, where would the way that rocket went?
Right.
Because quite often, especially in a very high altitude rocket, 10 or 15,000 feet, the rocket isn't where you think it is. You saw the smoke going this way and then you lost sight of it.
Right.
And, that was about 10 or 15 seconds ago. And it's actually 15 or 20 degrees in another direction. And it ain't the direction the wind's blowing.
Yes.
Because the winds on the ground are not the same as the winds up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very nice to be able to have that compass direction and know where is your rocket. It gives you the distance to your rocket. So you can see that creeping up and hopefully creeping back as it drifts back towards you if you're lucky, or drifts away from you if you're not as lucky. And finally, it gives you an arrow and the heading to your rocket. So
nice.
It will say, go that way 20 degrees from the direction that you're moving. So I have a Suzuki Quad Sport that I bought used pretty cheap a few years ago after I had a rocket blow its main at 14,000 feet. It didn't blow the main, but the shear pins were loose.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't smart enough at the time to say, you know what, I'm going to tape these shear pins in so they don't come loose. Well, they came loose. And so as best I could tell from the data afterwards, about 1,000 feet past apogee, it came loose. So, and it caught a wind and it landed about 5.5 miles away. And I was able to track it all the way back. This was in Vegas, and it actually landed on the far side of a hill. So I lost track of the last altitude I saw was 1,000 feet, a little over 5.5 miles away. So I said, oh, dang, that's a long drive. And this is really nasty territory. And the guy next to me had a razor. He said, well, you know where it is? Yep. All right, let's go. So we did. And after that, I went and got the Quad Sport. It was right where it said it was, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So after I got that thing back, I said, note to self, go get something to retrieve your rockets with. So I got the Quad Sport, but I built a bracket for the receiver on the handlebars of the Quad Sport.
Mm-hmm.
So when I get one of those long recoveries, I just strap the thing to the handlebars, fire the thing up, and I just follow the arrow and go get it.
Right.
So it really makes recovery easy.
That's really cool.
So as you can see, we make all kinds of things. So the best thing to do if you want information on our stuff is to go on our website. It's Eggtimer Rocketry.com. All of our documentation is out there. All the assembly guides, all the user manuals. We have descriptions and things. All the release notes for the various versions of the software. And that's where we post the software updates. So we generally recommend checking it every few months to see if we've updated the software. We don't really have a list server. I should probably do that, but we don't really send email out to our customers saying, hey, we've done this, because, your spam filter is going to catch it half the time to throw it away anyway. So we recommend our customers check our website for firmware updates every few months anyway. But basically everything we sell is right out there on the website.
Nice. So, at this point, this makes a convenient point to take another break here on the show, take care of a few more of our ads, and then we'll come back. Jesse, I understand, has some questions from listeners, and then we'll do a little more chatting to wrap things up. And we are talking to Cris Erving of Eggtimer Rocketry on The Rocketry Show. We'll be back after this.
Hey, all you rocket geeks out there. Do you like doing in-flight videos of your flights? And do you ever use those keychain cams and unfortunately sometimes only get videos of your thumb? Hey, this is Gene from The Rocketry Show, and that used to happen to me. I used to use those old keychain cams only to get nothing very good quality. But I found a solution to that, and it's Insane Rockets. It's an app that's available on the Google Play Store for Nexus 5X and higher. Now get this, it does 4K video. But not only that, it'll upload it automatically to the cloud and provide you real-time telemetry while tracking your rocket through Google Earth. It is amazing. Available on the Google Play Store, Insane Rockets app. It's crazy. No, wait. It's insane.
It's time for Serious Rocketry. Serious Rocketry, since 1998, providing the Rocketeer with great kits, motors, supplies, and more. They have lots of products in their ever-growing web store with fast shipping, wide selection, and courteous service. You can also check out the amazing and popular Serious Rocketry kits that harken back to the days of fun-to-build detailed kits that are more than just 3 fins and a nose cone. Gene has been kind of like scanning around on the site looking for things. And what'd you find?
Oh, as always, tons of stuff. But in particular, there's one that's just jumped out tonight to me. And we all know the Aerotech Initiator, right? It's a great rocket. A lot of people did their mid-power, cut their chops on the Initiator. It's the fins that are really stand out on this rocket. It's a simple design, but it looks really cool. How about an upscale of that? How about the Aerotech Mega Initiator? Now check this out. They've upscaled their Initiator into the Mega Initiator. It's designed for multiple motor mounts, and it's ready for anything from a G to a K. This kit is a great way to transition into high-power rocketry or just fly the large rocket on a G motor. A lot of features included in this kit are, it's got a 4-inch pre-slotted airframe, a 12-inch payload bay, a nice plastic nose cone, 36-inch nylon parachute, 54, 38, and 29 lock and mount motor mount, which is kind of an interesting motor mount that Aerotech has. Motor retention. It's got the fin lock rings that they're famous for. Rail guides, all the hardware is included, the decals included, and of course, it's dual deploy capable, being a 4-inch rocket with a payload base. So that's always something that's really cool. It comes in about 60 inches and about 32 ounces when it's built. And it is going on a sale price of $152.99 from Serious Rocketry. Pick up yourself an Aerotech Mega Initiator. So when the guys show up with their initiators, you can up them. Scale them, that is.
It's a great price, guys.
Yes.
Great price.
And when you're ready to order that or anything else, Serious Rocketry has real-time stock tracking, which lets you order with confidence from their online store. You don't have to worry about, whether or not something is really in stock or trying to find a way to contact somebody to find out, because it's all right there on the website. And when you're ready to fly, Serious Rocketry has motors and hardware in stock from Estes through Aerotech High Power, as well as popular electronics from Jolly Logic and Estes as well, because they've got stuff too now. Mm-hmm. Be sure to ask them about their club specials and visit their websites today at SIRIUSrocketry.biz and .com. Serious Rocketry, for the serious Rocketeer.
Now, here's one of the coolest, most exciting products I've seen in a long time. Just imagine the thrill and excitement of launching your own real rocket into the heavens. Reach altitudes of over 1,000 feet, and then watch your rocket majestically return back to Earth on its own colorful parachute. These amazing rockets can be launched over and over again. Just replace the rocket motor for each new flight. For propulsion, they use the new Q-Jet composite propellant model rocket motor from Aerotech West. This revolutionary high-performance rocket motor uses the same family of propellant as the Space Shuttle boosters. Aerotech West has successfully miniaturized NASA technology, so now you can create your own private space program and launch whenever and wherever you wish. They feature complete star descents, dozens of awesome rocket kit designs, a complete line of high-performance composite propellant model rocket motors, plus launch pads, launch controllers, and many accessories. Check out their entire line of incredible model rocketry products at aerotech-rocketry.com or questaerospace.com. Armed and counting. 3, 2, 1. Blast off.
The Rocketry Show would like to thank the following patrons for their support: JohnRocket.com, Jason Rodney, Sean Falkingham, Joe S., Paul Olivieri, Sam Feinberg, Michael Aylward, Brian Schenkenberger, E. Hudnell, John Thompson, Mark McBride, Doug Wade, C. McCauley, Carl Hunting, the Piedmont Student Launch Team, Steve S., Cris Erving, David Simmons, SBRFusionRocket.biz, John Kusher, Christopher Short, Kelsey Black, Brian Renneker, and Jason Rodney. If you wish to show your support and become a patron of The Rocketry Show, just visit us at patreon.com/The Rocketry Show. Welcome back to The Rocketry Show at TheRocketryShow.com. CG, Jeem, and Jesse here. We're talking to Cris Erving of Eggtimer Rocketry. And Jesse, I guess we're going to start with you because you've got listener questions.
Yeah, so I like to, I probably shouldn't do this, but I was like, hey, we're going to talk to Cris this week. Do you guys want to ask some questions? Because it's the listeners that we want to keep happy, right? So I went ahead and did that.
Well, Jesse, you're the default social media guy, so you think of things that we don't. Yeah. So,
all right. So good old Terry Dancer had a couple questions here, and actually, it looks like just one question. Okay, so Terry asks, I would like to know what the typical margin for error is on barometer-based altitude readings and GPS-based altitude readings. Oh, actually, that's a pretty good question, actually.
It's funny because Cris and I were having a conversation about that while we were setting up.
Nice. Okay. Well, Cris, let's. What do you think about that?
Well, here's the deal.
Okay.
Everybody uses the same standard temperature pressure model for turning pressure into altitude.
Okay.
And it is less than perfect. It makes some assumptions. And, you correct it for temperature and things like that. But honestly, it's not 100% accurate. It's a ballpark. And for example, NAR recognizes that. And that's why when you fly a record attempt, you have to be at the old record attempt by at least 2% for them to recognize it. Because there is a margin of error in barometric pressure sensors, and they are internally corrected. Theoretically, the manufacturer calibrates them individually,
right?
And part of the routine that you use to convert to read that pressure is to read those calibration values that they've programmed into the sensor and run through a routine that adjusts the pressure according to the calibration. But there will be some error. And if you fly 3 different barometric pressure sensors, you're probably going to get 3 different readings. Now, they should be fairly close, but they're not going to be exact.
It's like credit scores.
Usually,
sorry.
Yeah, your mileage may vary. So
there you go.
I would say 1% is plus or minus 1% is probably a pretty reasonable resolution.
And that's acceptable. I mean, that makes sense.
Right. Now, the higher you go, because the air thins out, the higher you go, the more that margin of error increases. And, you will hear manufacturers say, oh, our sensor is good to 100,000 feet.
Right.
But there's a caveat to that. If you look at the specs for the barometric pressure sensor, the full accuracy range of that sensor may only be at an altitude that translates to 30,000 feet. So once you start getting over 30,000 feet, that margin of error increases. So you can use it for detecting apogee as long as you don't get so thin that basically it doesn't register changes anymore. But to say, oh, I went to 98,642 feet, is ridiculous. You don't get that kind of accuracy. The resolution isn't there. If you're going to 10,000 feet, and you get 10,612 feet, you can pretty much say, yeah, I went to around 10.6, plus or minus a bit. And, again, unless you're going for records like that, most people look at the number and go, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Log it. Okay. There you go.
GPS altitude theoretically is is supposed to be pretty spot on, but it depends on a lot of things. It depends on how many satellites you lock in on. It depends.
For me, I've noticed that was the big variable.
GPS altitudes. That a lot of that is the quality of your antenna, how good your FRMS data is, which is the satellite motion data. There's just how good your vertical degree of precision is. There's just a lot of things there.
Yeah.
And, if you're not going, that actually gets better the higher you go up. So I've found that when you go to, above 10,000 feet, your GPS altitude is actually pretty good, because you're away from obstructions. And as long as, the thing isn't spinning around, you tend to get a fairly good lock. Down on the ground, it's not as good. There's more obstructions. There's stuff going on there.
One of the things I noticed since I started doing the logging with the ground station, and I log all those parameters, and I've noticed that when my rocket will launch, once it gets over 1,000 feet or so, it starts locking onto more satellites, and at one point it's up to 15. And that's when I noticed the altitude was tracking with the barometric pressure sensor more or less. But below 1,000 feet, you get when you start getting down to eight or nine satellites or less, the precision goes away on the GPS.
Yeah, I like the baro sensor altitude. It tends to be more responsive.
Right.
The TRS sends that data to the LCD tracking receiver. So, for example, on the other trackers, the altitude data that you get is GPS altitude data. On the TRS, it's giving you the baro altitude data. And you'll generally find that that's a lot more responsive.
Yeah, I display the baro pressure on mine, but I log what the GPS is bringing back. Just out of curiosity.
As a comparison.
So.
Yeah, you should log both. Yeah, you should log both and do a comparison.
Yeah, that's what I do. It's and that's how I can tell that the more satellites that the rocket sees on the way up, the more accurate the altitude reading from the GPS is. And as the rocket gets back to the ground again on parachute, that accuracy starts to go off more the closer to the ground it gets as the number of satellites drop down.
Yeah, on the subject of acquiring satellites, I have a lot of people that will email our support number. Hey, I just built your tracker and I have it inside. I have it on my workbench and I'm not picking up any satellites.
He won't either.
Yeah.
Take it outside.
Right.
People, well, my phone has satellites. Well, here's the thing. Your phone is always on. So once it gets the satellites, downloads that FRMS data, and gets a fix, it knows where the satellites are.
Right.
And even without it, it's going to pretty much guess where it is. So it doesn't. Once it has it, it doesn't need as much of a fix. But to get that initial quality of fix takes time. And I tell people, okay, take it out in your backyard, or preferably go to a park somewhere, preferably out in a ball field where there isn't a whole lot of obstructions, and test it out there. And, typically people say, I went and did that and gee, I got a fix.
Yeah.
Good job.
And you're right about that, because I've noticed playing around with my stuff when, if I take it and even set it near a window and it gets a lock, then I can walk around in the house with it in the basement. It'll still work. But that initial fix, you're not going to get it indoors.
Right.
There's a really good tool for looking at that. All of our trackers have the GPS data brought out. So you can use we sell a little USB serial cable that's used for updating firmware, but it's also good for testing. There's a really good tool called Visual GPS. That's a Windows program. And you can feed the serial feed from the GPS directly into your laptop. And it will show you the satellites. It will show you their relative strengths. When it gets a fix, it'll show you the fix and the quality of the fix. And that's a really nice free tool that I strongly recommend using for troubleshooting all of our and testing all of our GPS units.
It's a good tip. Thank you.
Yes.
Quick question, just as like somebody who's like, I'm an electronics guy, but I was brought up in the component world where I didn't actually build boards. Okay. So my soldering skills are pretty much non-existent. And what would you say to somebody like me that has a decent knowledge of what the components are and what they do, but who's never soldered anything before, but wants to try one of these?
I'd start with an Apogee or a Classic. They're through hole. They're a lot not as fiddly as the surface mount parts.
Okay. Yep.
You're probably more likely to have success with them. I haven't had too many people send them back to me for remediation. So, of course, the Apogee's too new anyway. But, again, we've been doing the Classics for many years. And, they're pretty much bulletproof. It's pretty hard to mess one of those things up. As long as you, get the right tools. And it's honestly, this is kind of the number one thing that I get pre-sale. What tools do I need? And there's a couple things you need. The first thing you need is a good soldering pencil or station. Now, you don't need to run out and spend $200 on a fancy digital temperature control soldering station. But there's Weller and a few other people make some little 12 or 15 watt pencil irons that work just fine. But you can't run to Home Depot and get one of those 25 watt irons.
You have the big wire loop on the end of it.
That's not going to work.
So not the gun. Yeah.
Well,
not the gun. Okay.
That's like a 60 watt gun.
Yeah.
Not the gun.
Yeah, don't pay attention to the Hollywood movies because the Hollywood movies always have people working on little boards with a big Home Depot gun with a big giant loop of wire at the end of it. Yeah.
The tip on that thing's like an inch long. It's like the size of your board.
So a little pencil is perfect.
Yeah, I remember soldering stuff with a gun.
And the other thing with the pencil too, versus like the digital soldering stations are okay, but that's after you learn how to solder and get the feel for it, because you can cause more damage with the digital one setting it wrong than with just a little 15 or 20 watt pencil.
Right.
Soldering iron.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I went to Fry's and got a Weller when I was visiting one of the bigger cities before, and I actually got a couple of Weller irons, and I love them. And when I was in college, I went to good old DeVry, and that was one of the irons that they make sure you buy a Weller. That was one of the things. Well, there's obviously different versions of Wellers and different tips. Yeah, so once I got my tips down, it was a mad chase to try to find something that I used back in college, and I found some, and that's what I use now. So I'm all set. Yeah, simple.
The little Weller irons are really nice. For if you really want to get a digital station, I recommend getting the Hako stations. They're around $100. It's not that cheap, but it's not horribly expensive. The tips are easy to find. They have a wide variety of tips.
Okay. Well, as soon as you said the name, it popped in my head.
Yeah, and that will probably be the last soldering station you ever buy. So they're a nice station too, if you want to do that. Yeah. The tip size is important. Most of our kits, I recommend about a 1/32 inch tip, conical or spade tip.
Okay.
The other thing you need is...
I do like the spades myself.
I'm a conical guy, so to each his own. But that's here's the thing: if you use a spade enough, it's going to erode away. It's going to become a conical anyway.
Yeah, touche. Yeah. Yep.
But if you use a conical long enough, it kind of becomes like just blunt at the end. Once you notice that the end is pretty much worn down, it's time to go get a new tip.
Once it looks like a ballpoint
you need
pen,
a good, yeah. you need a good.
Yeah, and then once they start, I was gonna say, once they start wearing fast. I mean, over the years, I'm like that dude that'll drive a car into the ground with the soldering tips. They'll start wearing down, and when they start wearing down, they start oxidizing. The solder won't stick. Just grind it a little bit more, get a little more life out of it. And I'm soldering down to a nub. It's like, okay,
it's like sandpaper with me. I do that with sandpaper.
But they start.
That kind of leads me to the next thing you need. You need to get a tinning block. The tinning blocks, and use it liberally. And that will make your tip last so much longer than just, I'm going to just wipe it on a wet sponge. Don't use a wet sponge. Go get one of those brass mesh cleaner sponge things. They're about $10 or $15, and they're worth their weight in gold. Because if you just wet a sponge, you're basically going to kill your tip pretty quickly. It just makes them oxidize faster.
I wet a paper towel. I know exactly what you're talking about. You're right. Okay, I'll go get one.
Go get one.
I'll do it.
And you throw the temperature off on the iron too.
Okay.
And the iron will get colder as you do that. And it makes it harder to jump back in and work too.
And then finally, but not least, is you need to get a lighted magnifier. So I have a desktop 3x magnifier here that I've had for a while. It's got kind of it's one of those things with a cantilever elbows. Unfortunately, it takes up kind of a lot of real estate space, both on the base and with a cantilever lever. But you really need a good lighted magnifier. I like that kind. Some people have used the jeweler head lighted magnifiers. I had somebody lend me one of those one time, and I didn't personally like it very much because I kept having to go back and forth, and my old eyes can't handle that. But you need a good lighted magnifier, especially for the surface mount stuff. And a few of our kits, as I mentioned before, we try to use the biggest surface mount parts that we can squeeze on the board. A lot of them are 1206 size, which if you're familiar with surface mount, it's like 1206. That's gigantic. Yes, it is. And then we make the pads bigger. We intentionally expand the pads on the ends so you can actually get a nice little solder fillet on the ends of the parts, not just underneath it. Because remember, if you're hand soldering it, the standard pad sizes for most surface mount components is designed for machine pick and place, where it takes the parts. They have a machine, servo operated machine. If you've ever seen one of these things work, they're just like totally cool. But I mean, it'll just pick up the part with a little vacuum, and it'll drop it on the board, and the board has been pre-silk screened with a paste. And when you do that, you want the pads to exactly fit the part, so you can cram them in as close as you can. But that's not what you want to do for hand soldering. So we tend to use larger than normal pads, and we try to space things a certain distance apart. Our minimum distance apart is typically about around 12 thousandths of an inch. We get enough room so that with a lighted magnifier, you can look at it and you can see, okay, these two parts are not shorting. Nice. But some of our kits, like the Quark, for example, to make them smaller, we use smaller parts, 0805. That's the next size down, and that's the smallest size parts we get. And some of those parts, even in 0805, are tricky, like the mini switch, which is our smaller, cheaper version of the Wi-Fi switch that doesn't have the continuity checking feature in it, but it's half the size. It uses 805 parts, and the LEDs are 805. So little LEDs light up, and people come back to me and say, these things are really hard to solder, and it's like, yes, they are. Next question, please.
Yeah.
So the next question that I have is from our Colorado group. So one of my friends here, they said that they just bought a Quark from you. So they've opened it up, looked at it, and they're excited to build it. So you got some good feedback there. Kenneth Copas, who's one of our newly leveled 1 certified flyers here in Colorado, just said, Gosh, I just built the classic. Found it fun and easy. What kit would he recommend as the next steps in terms of difficulty? So if he just bought the classic, I mean, I would assume that you just kind of step out the ladder where you said, that the Quark was surface mount, right? So that to me sounds like that would be the next logical step. But what do you suggest? I mean, they're your products.
Actually, I would go with the Quantum.
Okay. See.
The Quantum has bigger parts.
Nice. Okay.
The Quark has fewer parts, but they're smaller.
Right. Okay.
So if you're going from through hole to surface mount, the bigger parts help. So you might want to try a Wi-Fi switch to kind of get your feet wet with the surface mount parts. And you can use a Wi-Fi switch very easily with a classic.
Okay.
Or get a Quantum. And a lot of the parts on the Quantum, most of the parts in the deployment side, the transistors and rectifiers, things like that, they're all through hole.
Okay.
So there's actually half the board is through hole. And the Wi-Fi module itself is a surface mount part, but it's got holes on the castellated pads. And what we have you do is we actually have you solder cut up resistor leads in there and basically turn it into a through hole part.
Cool.
And by doing that, it actually makes it easier to mount than it would be if you had to mount this thing on the board. Because if you had to mount it as a
like flush
surface mount part on the board, it would be relatively easy to get a bridge underneath the device, and you'd have a hard time finding that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we have we see that problem all the time with the trackers. People will over solder the GPS, or they'll over solder the radio module, which has castellated pads. And they can get solder bridges underneath the device, and you can't tell. And the only way to get rid of that is to completely remove all the solder. And I've had a fair number of people
solder sucker.
Yeah, well, and the thing if you have to unsolder something, by the way, don't ever use canned air. I mean, I've had people say, "Oh, I'll just heat it up and blow it away with canned air." No.
It makes it worse.
No. It makes it
just
worse.
Bridged your other parts of your circuits. So, okay, that's fun.
Metal everywhere.
Yeah. The one rule, if you subscribe to the rule of bigger the blob, the better the job, you're going to fail. So use just enough solder.
You will fail. Just enough solder. The surface mounted particular. Yeah.
So just the last question. What would he recommend as practice for some of the harder kits? And I think you obviously just kind of talked, a little bit about that. But is it safe to say that you probably want to do one of the altimeters before you go into the trackers?
I would recommend that. They're easier to troubleshoot, I think.
Okay, cool. Nice. All right, well,
the trackers are a little harder to troubleshoot because there's other variables. And there's also, if you go on to Amazon or eBay and you do a search on surface mount practice kits, they actually have some practice kits that do blinky lights and things like that. So I've heard of a number of people using those too, and they're pretty cheap. But I'd rather, of course, that you use one of our kits as practice.
Yeah, of course.
Or everybody could just go and have Eric Hamilton, solder your stuff together, and apparently that's a thing,
There's actually a few people. Eric's the thing. There's a gentleman out in New York named Connor McGrath. He just recently graduated from college. He's actually been doing this for several years. But there's a few people out there that are assembling our kits, and for a fee. We don't offer them assembled. Obviously, I don't have the time to do it, and if I had them pre-made, there kind of wouldn't be any point in doing it. So,
and then the price would be way up higher too.
And the price would be way up. Low volume assembly is ridiculously expensive. And there are some people that do that specialize in that. But it's kind of a way to make you buy the parts from them, really.
So one of the suggestions that's on one of the groups here says that there should be a checkbox to just send the parts to Eric Hamilton. so something to think about, Chris. That's good stuff. Obviously, got a good rapport with Eric, so everybody that buys something from one of the vendors, and you guys get a good rapport. That's cool in rocketry, and that's one of the nicest things about this hobby is everybody's got a rapport with everybody. So the heroes become human and somebody that you can work with. So thanks for going over all this with us, man. That's good stuff.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show, Chris. This has been this is great, and I hope it inspires more people to try their hand at soldering to go to these kits. It's the next best thing to designing it all yourself.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Oh, no
Between
problem.
CG and his electronic builds and the stuff that he shows us, and having this conversation with you, Chris, and looking at your website, I think we're going to get dirty here during the holidays and use some bonus money to get some stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And one more time for the listeners out there, the website to go and check all this good stuff out is Eggtimerrocketry.com. Simple. Eggtimerrocketry.com.
Ah, yes. Thanks for joining us there, Chris. That was a great episode. Hopefully, it whet your appetite to order a bunch of these Eggtimer kits and start soldering away.
I'm looking at replacement irons right now. Yeah, I'm no longer
I'm
afraid.
not afraid. I can solder.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, the big trick is just don't overdo the solder. If you want to do some practice work, you can practice soldering some wires together. There's also on Amazon, you can order these surface mount component practice kits, which is a big board. They give you a ton of resistors and things like that.
Oh, cool.
Of various sizes that you can practice soldering on those parts. And Chris says, hey, just use my kits to do it. You could. But if you're really nervous about it, you're really nervous, you can always start with that, get the hang of it. And the trick, and you'll be surprised, how little solder it takes. In fact, you try to see as you practice on that, see how little you can get away with using.
Yep.
But the big trick is you want to make sure you want to get the parts nice and hot, but not too hot. So as a general rule of thumb, especially when it comes to soldering on some of the semiconductors and things, you generally don't want to hold the iron on there for longer than 30 seconds or so. So you tap it on there. After about 10, 15 seconds, you should have enough heat going. Especially on the surface mount, it's even less. Through hole, about 10, 15 seconds. Surface mount, almost no time. It's like, and what I generally try to do is when you put the tip on the area to heat up, I touch the solder to a piece of the iron tip and on the board at the same time, so that so you get a little bit of melting going on, and then it'll flow onto the
Makes
parts.
that flow. Yep. I like it.
And for wires, I generally like to tin both, like take the solder, hold the tip on the wire, drip a little solder on it to get enough just to get a thin coating of solder on both wires. Then you can solder them both together, and generally that works out great for me. Because the last thing you want is a cold solder joint where you think you've got it. And generally you get that when the parts are moving, like if the two wires are moving around after you solder them, or if you don't heat them up just enough, it'll sort of look like you got it, but the second there's any stress on it, it just pops loose. So that's where those general rule of thumbs with the temperature, just to
it's good to know.
do that, and you'll be good.
After building electronic bays, sometimes you don't always have JST connectors you can crimp on to the wires, et cetera, et cetera. I've been doing solder on the wires, and I just recently ordered rotary switches and screw switches from MissileWorks, and I've been using those. And, you have to solder those connections. So the same rules apply, CG. So, yeah, thanks for mentioning that. Because, if you guys need practice, start putting some, switches together.
Yeah.
Those screw switches, you got to put leads on them. I mean, you could connect a spade connector somehow and, put them on the bottom where they mount. But I don't know. To me, just, putting a lead on there and then to a JST type connector, I don't know. I think to me, that's what I've been doing. And it's kind of fun. So
I get screw switches that are already wired, but that's a great idea.
Good call.
So.
You wimp.
Yeah, I know. Hey, at least I know that's one part that's not going to fail because I didn't do it. So there you go.
My solder joints don't fail, Gene. At least not yet.
Keep
But watch,
practicing.
I'll launch this level 3 here, and then something will go wrong. So yeah. Knock on wood.
I hands a solder off in the wings in this corner, Jesse.
Yeah.
With his .10 tip.
Nice. Yeah, exactly.
The other thing that's going on now, and I'm sure that it's probably affecting a lot of Rocketeers, but it's reached around to us, where COVID restrictions are coming in, so a lot of launches are being canceled, and because you just can't gather enough people to do it. So this is a perfect time to, in this downtime, to go and practice a new skill, soldering together their own electronics. Learn soldering and put together some Eggtimer kits. So yeah. So we've got that. And another thing that I've been forgetting to mention on the last several episodes of the show, because it's been active, but we just haven't been saying it. Now we've got the word out on social media, so there's some activity going on. But now you can easily get a hold of shirts, Rocketry Show t-shirts.
Yes.
Swag.
Yeah, swag. So basically, if you want a t-shirt, you go to shirts.TheRocketryShow.com. It'll take you to our TeePublic site. And you can order that or sweatshirts, whatever. And here's the trick. If you see something else that you said, man, it'd be kind of cool to have a Rocketry Show logo on that, what you can do is you can pick out anything else that they make, which is a lot of things, and pick it out, and then you can choose our logo to slap on it. Make your own Rocketry Show swag if you really want it. It still helps the show.
Gonna do a cup.
Yeah, as long as our logo's on it, it still helps out our program. So, you can do just about anything you want with the logo on it to show your support and awe everybody. So, shirts.TheRocketryShow.com takes you to the portal, which by default are shirts. So, there you go. And for the patrons of the Rocketry Show, if you join in at some of the other tiers, you get either a magnet or a Rocketry Show mug. So, you have to be...
And they're nice.
At the higher tier for about 3 months, and then you'll get it. So, yeah, they're really nice. So, there you go.
I'm looking forward to getting my sweatshirt.
There you Where'd you get that? Got it from the Rocketry Show.
And that website is again?
Shirts.TheRocketryShow.com. Shirts.TheRocketryShow.com.
I won't forget now. Thank you. That's
You're
cool. That's
welcome.
great.
Yes.
And it's kind of a neat little thing because I know that people have been asking for this stuff.
Yes.
Over time you get it and like, oh yeah. Well, we got it now, guys. So go out and do it.
And we've been experimenting with it. And the problem is it's coming out with a reliable way to get the stuff out and to everyone that wants it. So this is a nice, reliable, mechanized way to do it. You just order and it comes. So that makes me happy. That'll makes you happy as well. So another thing here, now Jesse, earlier you were like, you were all smiles earlier because now you're kind of famous in a way.
I want to think that I am, but yeah, something kind of cool happened to me today. So you guys know that Big Nuke 4 I've been talking about forever and ever and ever, and ever since I got on the Rocketry Show, I've been talking about this rocket. It is now the official production flash for that rocket from Lock Precision. So I'm very honored and very happy to see that. So it means I did a good job. So the render flash that they did, I made the rocket look that way, and they're going to be selling that rocket that way. So when you buy a Big Nuke 4, which is also, by the way, 98 millimeter, 93 inches tall, 98 millimeter motor mount, 5.5 inch diameter, long nose cone, huge payload bay, switch band, electronics bay. It's got the works. Y harness, and then the 2 harnesses for both. It has 2 parachutes. One for your drogue, one for your main. It's a complete kit. It's $260, guys. It is cheap.
Wow.
Maybe I shouldn't talk price, but I'm just saying, you want a good dual deploy big fat rocket that's awesome and works, get that thing. And then if you want to fly it, 75 millimeter to 54 millimeter, either make an adapter or because I made my own adapter, or order them. Lock Precision has them too, and they're not very expensive. So you can even go to Vanderbeek if you want and have Vanderburn make one for you. So you can launch that rocket on almost anything. It's great. I'm very proud of that thing. And
so, you got to get that art and put it in a frame and hang it in your rocket room.
Yeah. I'll, actually, that's a good idea. I might see if Jason can have one of those, or, whenever my friends buy that rocket, then I'll just see if they want that art on their box.
You just want a big old picture of you hugging that rocket. That's what you want.
Yeah, right. That's beautiful. It's beautiful. It looks great.
That'd be funny if that was actually on there. I do have a picture of me hugging that rocket. I don't know if I've ever showed you guys, but you might have to give that to you for show notes.
I've seen them. Yeah, I know where one is. Yes, it's going in show notes.
Proud stuff, guys. And you know what? There's a lot of manufacturers that do that. Steve Skinner and Mach 1 Rocketry have a lot of the pictures from, users with their kits. And Wildman does the same thing. They don't have like actual flash, so they rely on all the builders to create the pictures for that stuff so that they can put on the website. So, email pictures to your manufacturers, for everybody that you build rockets from. Mad Cow, send those to Mike, send, Mike Fisher, all this, Binder design stuff. Send Scott Binder all the SBR and BSD stuff. Send those guys the pictures of your rockets, post them on Facebook because, and let them
don't forget Sticker Shock.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh yeah. And Sticker Shock actually made the decals for that too. So thank you, Mark. And thank you, Gene, for reminding me. So, Sticker Shock, he's able to replicate a ton of different things for rockets and even create some. And a lot of the ones that you see on, Mach 1, Mach 1, I think they design their own decals. But I know for a fact that Wildman, Tim has worked with Wildman to kind of get some creations down for some of the stock decals that, aren't available from Wildman, but you can get them from Mark. So get them from Sticker Shock, and he's got a whole website with different models on there. And if you don't see the one that you want, he'll make them for you. Good stuff.
Absolutely.
Yes. And also, you probably wondered when we were saying that this is episode 99, it's like, whoa, wait, they're almost 100 episodes in. And so the very next episode of The Rocketry Show is going to be a fun one. Where all four of us will get together, Daniel and Jesse, Gene and I, and we will basically have fun talking about episode 100, and we'll also take that opportunity to have a big group workshop session where we could talk about everything we've been working on. I've been sitting on a lot of information on my latest launch, Demo 4, which is actually split into two because I kind of anticipated COVID happening because I was watching the numbers blow up. So I combined two different missions into one day. So it's Demo 4A and 4B. And actually, I just got done with some of the detail and data, and I made some corrections. So we'll talk about all of that on episode 100.
Okay.
So what do you have for episode 100, gang? Because I know you guys have some big projects that you were involved with.
I'll just keep my projects quiet for the moment.
Okay.
That's all I can say.
The other thing, too,
I'm still working on level 3 and trying to figure out how I'm going to paint this thing in the winter now because I didn't get a chance to work on it, because work. So I actually put my level 3 on hold, and even though I was trying to get it done in October, it didn't work out. But now I'm trying to figure out how to paint this thing, around Thanksgiving, and I gave up on it a little bit because I'm going to create an indoor paint booth. So I'll be talking about that in episode 100. And it's going to be exciting for me because Noob did an indoor paint booth. So I'm going to be picking his brain during episode 100.
There you go.
And then we'll get level 3 done. We'll launch it sometime next year early. So that's our plan.
And I have to say, the one thing I will say about the latest one is I made a point to try to get some impressive pictures out of the Demo 4 launch. It was like it's the last of the big tests using Mr. Bean, the Mr. Bean rocket. And I did get some pretty cool shots. So
good.
So we'll be sharing those on the notes for that too. Alrighty, so we're gonna head on out of here now. So on that note,
keep your eyes in the skies.
All right, we'll catch you next time here at The Rocketry Show at TheRocketryShow.com.
Have a comment? We'd love to hear it. Send them to mailbag@TheRocketryShow.com. If you enjoyed what you heard, don't forget to check out our sister show, TheModelRocketShow.com. The Model Rocket Show is hosted by the Rocket Noob and is all about low to mid-power rocketry. TheModelRocketShow.com with Daniel, the Rocket Noob. Check it out today. The views and opinions expressed on these programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Little Beth Entertainment or its sponsors.